This podcast discusses scandalous topics like communication, community, sexual health, leather, kink, and more. If you are under the age of 18, please leave us and visit scarletteen.com. If you're over 18, join us and let's get naughty.
Yeah.
United.
But
yeah.
Oh, I felt a little stretched. But we have this evening our topic, which was kind of nice because we had a little more time to kind of think about it and strategize, because we wanted to do a topic that was a little more maybe in depth or a little more
serious.
A little more serious. I mean, we're
serious.
Cannot promise that we will not have a giggle fest in the middle of it, but for the important parts.
The only thing I can guarantee is that there will be at least one giggle fest.
One giggle fest.
And two puns.
Two puns specifically.
Our
Our topic this evening is kind of disappearing spaces.
Yeah.
Specifically for the LGBTQ community and or leather kink, kind of all in one.
Yeah.
The other. The perpetual sexual other.
And I think there's going to be a pretty heavy, due to the research that we did, a heavy focus on female spaces.
Right.
Women's spaces. And that is not the TERF version. This is the female identified of any variety.
Woman.
Yeah. Women.
Yes, woman. You know who you are. We know who you are. And that's fine. And I think that's something that kind of developed during the research, I think, as well, because there was a overt lack of women's spaces to begin with.
Yeah.
And then this little category died off even more. Just, I think we'll kind of get to some of the research we did on that, but so that's kind of how you will kind of hear us focus a little bit more on that. It doesn't mean that we think the other spaces are not important. We just feel like they get a lot more airtime, and so therefore we have decided to put these particular ones on blast as well.
These are also the ones that speak to us as individuals.
Yes, no, absolutely. Because we're women.
We're all women.
She's like, oh, that's me.
Well, it's us, I guess. I just put a list together of kind of the spaces that we're in the Tampa Bay community, but we're also kind of including reaching out to the Orlando area,
Central
St.
Florida,
this whole kind of weird little nook area, because there's a lot of intersection going on. We travel a lot. If you're in Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater area, you're making a journey to Orlando, because there's certain spaces, clubs, bars, play spaces that you can go to there, and vice versa, and things like that. We've had a lot of closings recently in a couple of years, and not all of them were pandemic related.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting point to make.
Yeah, because there's definitely a separation between, this isn't just the newfound because the pandemic and financial hardships. It's been spanning for the past few years even.
Right. So I think the big one, let's talk about Orlando for a second, with Parliament House, which was around since 1975, and it closed in 2020.
I feel like that one shocked everyone.
Its closure was not pandemic related to my knowledge.
It was
financial,
related.
Obviously, but it was not pandemic. I say 2020, but I want to say it was not.
It
pandemic
was already.
Related. It was already kind of circling the drain as far as needing to close for their own reasons. But I mean, that's a huge set. 1975, that's a landmark at that point.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
I think it is considered historic, but for me, I grew up in Orlando.
Yeah, it's home turf.
And that was, the P House.
Yeah,
was my first gay club.
I went there for a couple bear nights. I was very out of place, but I was like, I just love them.
Right?
I just love them. So I'm like, don't mind me. I'm not in the way. I just want to admire you as you go by.
But yeah, no, that was. It was one of the spaces that I went to really early in, my adult...
Right. Exploratory.
Yeah, queerness of all the things.
Did they used to have ladies' nights there or something?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, my boyfriend...
special parties or something? No.
Well, I don't know. They might have.
But you didn't.
I only went with my boyfriend, who identified as bisexual.
I gotcha.
And so he and I would go.
Right.
And some of the other friends in our goth punk group of sexually fluid individuals, because looking back, you're like, oh shit, we were all pan and poly and weird as fuck.
Didn't have the words,
but we didn't have. We were us, and so we definitely went, and it was an interesting space. I mean, all of the shinies for me, because I was a baby comparatively. But, you know, that has been a space, even for people in Orlando who weren't in or connected to the queer community. Like, my mom knew what P House was.
Yeah, it was a
for
landmark,
like
yeah,
years and years. Like, everybody knew what it was.
Right. I just liked going there in like my retro bathing suits, and it, like, all, like I said, on bare nights, whatever you call them, and things like that, because they just like, I love your bikini. I'm like, I love your beard.
Yeah. And the best part is you have that vintage bathing suit, and it is a very, for those who have not gotten the chance to go there, it is very much. It was built in the 70s.
Yeah, so
and it was still the 70s when you walked up in there.
Very in place, actually, yeah, fashion-wise, which is also kind of why I liked it, because I love like playing with costumes and period clothing that's more like kind of modern and things like that. So that was always fun to like be the decorative item at the bear party. No one's gonna bother you, obviously, but
yeah,
it could be included.
Yeah. It's definitely one that I'm sad that I missed out.
I was gonna ask if you ever got a chance to go.
So I'll preface that you guys probably won't hear too much from me aside from me saying, "Man, I wish I could have been there." I haven't
you can ask
been.
The questions.
I can ask the questions, but like for me, I feel like it's almost a little extra sad in a sense. Like, I know that these places meant so much to everyone who's gotten to go to them, but at the same time, it's like realizing I never get to experience these
arguably
places.
More important.
Exactly.
Because you and everyone coming after you
We
also will not
this.
have these spaces.
Yeah.
And so
like,
arguably more important that you just don't have the access at all. At least we had a chance.
Right. And like that's hard because, you know, like I started coming out into the community, and I say that at large because also like closeted gay at home. Knew I was definitely into women from a very young age, but no one else knew that about me. But
she's like, I just didn't realize how much I was into women.
I didn't realize how much I put off everything that I was into women. But anyways, that's a different story.
We'll talk about your internalized homophobia in another episode.
Oh God. But no, and so like it's a little hard, and like already like I kind of feel, I feel bummed out. Like it's an important topic. I'm excited for the topic, but I'm already getting a little sad 'cause I'm like I get to hear these awesome stories of them getting, like, everyone getting to experience these things. I know that those are such important memories. I don't really have those shaping foundation memories of anything like it. And the P House particularly is one that, you know, I had a chance to go to. And
what was then your first experience in either a queer or a leather space? I know we talked like your first play kind of experience. Was that the first? Would you qualify that as your first space?
I would qualify that as separate because my first experience for play was at a BD, like an S&M club. It wasn't based on sexuality or anything like that. I would argue that honestly it's more the cis het pan side of things than the gay side of things.
Right. So what about the first queer or lesbian kind of?
Personally, the closest thing for my first queer or lesbian would be me go. Well, yes, but when you took me, you took us to Henrietta Hudson's in New York. That was
really?
That was my first one.
I've been to
a gay bar. Like I had gone to the Flamingo for BDSM events.
Okay.
Which it's technically
it's a gay space. It's a gay space, yeah.
But it wasn't a woman's space. I mean, arguably,
I see.
The only thing I could say prior to that is I went to a Woman of Drummer event, which was specifically women identified only, but it was
BDSM.
small and it was a pop-up. It wasn't an actual space.
Okay. Drummer.
Yeah, but Henrietta Hudson would really be my first actual lesbian bar that I went to, which I think is it the longest standing in New York?
I think it's the oldest like continually operating lesbian bar in America. Actually,
gotcha.
is her specific claim to fame.
Okay, but yeah,
and so it's one of my the company, but usually when I go to New York for work, it's always one of my little haunts.
Yeah, so that would have been the first actual, like, space I have gone to that was specifically for women.
Okay.
Like I said, I had gone to Flamingo before. I'd gone to a few smaller gay bars, but it was always because I was always the, like, odd piece. And so it was either
because you were going with a gay guy.
Because I was going with a straight man who was going with his gay father. Yeah.
So you were going with a gay guy.
Yeah.
But then that goes to our point that Emma made earlier, is that you'd been to queer spaces, but it wasn't until our trip to New York that you went to a women's gay space or a women's queer space, right? Specifically.
And so like it's hard because we talk about that. That was 2020. That was the beginning of 2020. The first time.
Oh fuck!
Like
it was. That's right.
It was
right
the week before.
Like February.
Yeah.
The first week of February.
Yeah.
yeah, and so like it's a little sad for me because like I feel myself getting emotional. I'm like, why am I emotional? I haven't gotten to go to any of these places. Like, oh, I'm emotional because I haven't gotten to go to any of these places.
It's kind of like a great artist that you'll never get to see because they're dead.
Right.
You know, it's like you hear everyone talking about how amazing it was or how great it was, and they're sad that it's gone, but you're like, well, I'll never truly get to experience it. I can only experience it secondhand.
Right, and it's also kind of in line of like that regret of not going sooner. The FOMO, and like, you know, what I found out about myself sooner had I actually gone to these spaces and explored what they had, but I didn't know half of them existed.
Right.
I didn't,
and maybe, but you'll never know that.
And also, you're only a couple years old enough to go to a lot of the spaces.
That's the other thing too. Yeah.
So even if you had known, a lot of these spaces are 21 and over. Mm-hmm. So.
And a couple on these lists closed before you might have even made that mark. So let's go back to our list. So most recent, what would you say, casualty, I guess. Casualty is the honeypot in Tampa. Yeah. Which we were talking, Mark and I were talking before this, is like, I consider it to have died as a true queer space, particularly a women's space, long ago.
Yeah.
It technically was like labeled a lesbian bar like in a Google search, but
the name makes sense for a lesbian bar.
And it did when it
that's what opened. Honestly, that's why I was confused the first time I had to like walk through there to get to the party that they would hold upstairs.
The fetish party.
Yeah, and so like I was like, I thought this was a lesbian bar, but all I see are like like straight couples, which is fine because, you know, people can be bi, everything, super support that. But at the same time, I'm like, it doesn't feel like a queer space necessarily.
No, there used to be like Saturday night parties, which were like pretty much, I didn't really see anyone but women on Saturdays. Now, which way you swung was irrelevant because it was like just a girls' party. Gotcha. So you could be straight and go, but the idea was like
woman.
You did a cruise basically.
Yeah. I remember, so I was the president of a queer sorority. Okay. It was gender neutral in terms of who we had as sisters, but it was that idea of like camaraderie and things like that, because at my university, I at one point was in the like traditional Greek life, but I found that it wasn't accepting of who I was, which shock and not really.
Shock and awe. What do you mean?
I was hopeful.
Right.
So, and I knew other people who were in similar spaces, like guys who were flaming in like the most beautifully and flamboyant way, or you know, just anywhere on the spectrum of queerness. And so we had a sorority that we started, and we used to go in like 2007, 2008. We used to go to Honey Pot all the time. It was like our place to go hang because it was where we felt safe. Yeah, it was Honey Pot or G Bar were the two that we bounced back and forth at because they felt safe. But over time, Honey Pot in particular, because it's more like...
It's right on the main strip.
Yeah,
it's right in the thick of things. G-Bar was a little bit down, so it was a little more isolated.
Yeah. But they definitely started shifting like the themes and the promotions and things like that, and they kept drag and burlesque as like a big part of their thing. They always had... I know a bunch of people who've performed there. They were all super awesome. But over time, it became, I will say, particularly after like Drag Race started and things like, and drag started becoming such a mainstream commercial thing that
it took off in other ways.
The clientele very much shifted.
Yeah, I see.
Which changed the energy because people were coming for the drag, which hell fucking let's tip our, you know, our drag brothers and sisters.
Right.
All about that life. They have had such a huge part of our history.
Right.
Fucking Stonewall started with it.
But I think the difference is a lot of these cishet folks come in with this kind of voyeuristic intention.
Yep.
That is like, and if the space and the people in it don't fit this like commercial Drag Race ideal in their mind, they're like, okay, well, let's just gentrify it and get rid of it because it's not what I thought it was going to be. So I'm going to now take over this space and then have this kind of like,
and it made a lot of people. I think it made a lot of people uncomfortable because, you know, we don't generally like a lot of us don't want to go to straight clubs because we're gonna get hit on constantly.
I don't
we're gonna get harassed.
I don't want a bunch of chads on me. I don't.
But then all of a sudden, the like places like that started feeling like, oh, I know I talk with the guys, and you know, you talk about like, oh, bachelorette parties when they show up and like they're fetishizing the fact you're gay, and they're fetishizing the fact that, you know, this is a thing. And I felt like a lot of that was happening. All of a sudden, you had a lot of chads getting really shitty about the fact that a chick didn't want to talk to him because the chick went to a lesbian club, you just happened to walk in too.
Right, or like if you were up on another girl, like
be like, oh,
picking
that's
up
so
your
hot,
mark or whatever,
baby.
like there's this bro now who's breathing down your neck, like, can I join you? No, you fucking can't. Get out of my face. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
so
And girls were just as bad. There were a lot of girls who were like, oh, I'm not gay, but
I'll make out with you. I don't want to make out with you.
Yeah. And just assumed that because you were a female that you would obviously make out with them.
Yeah, don't want to do that. Please don't come near me.
No.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people felt that shift and, you know, slowly started not going because just wasn't a safe space anymore.
Right, yeah.
Not on a regular basis. Maybe on when there was a specific
time
theme,
or night, yeah.
But not in like the regular.
Yeah, it got to the point where like certain nights it would be like all the baby dykes who had just gotten old enough to go to a club. So obviously like they feel like this is for them and it should have been for them.
Yup.
And so they can have that space and then this drag bar, but then like you said, all the rest of the time was this totally different vibe, this totally different clientele that was never the original purpose of that space, and then it just kind of pushed out the people that really actually needed that space.
And that was one of our 18 and over spaces. So it was one of the few spaces that, you know, kids who were just coming out of high school.
18 plus or was it 21 plus?
I think it...
I don't remember.
No, it was 21 because I know some of our sisters were under 21.
Okay, I gotcha. Okay.
I was really old for sorority girl, but whatever.
Liquid, I think, was another one that was a bit like woogie on the rules of how old you had to be, which I think was part of the problem. But Liquid also was a bar that closed in this is all like the same street, by the way, and that's the baffling part, right? We're just talking about location. Like aside from Parliament House that we addressed earlier, these are all on the same street within walking distance, and these are ones that have all like closed down. Just kind of.
What were the years for those closings?
I didn't get Liquid's closing. It was within the last couple of years. Honeypot was this year. This is the Flamingo at St. Pete.
I can tell you Liquid was before 2018 because it was before I was 21. That Liquid
when did
closed.
the Ybor Spa and Resort, when did the bathhouse actually close? As we've discussed, it was on fire several times. When did it officially close? All right.
2017.
2017.
Now I found it.
Right.
Fucking
2017.
So, yeah.
This one, then we lost the Flamingo in St. Pete in 2019.
That one was really rough.
Yeah, we used that space a lot in the leather and kink community as well as a place because it was like a semi-private place that you could have these kinds of things.
Yeah, that one was like an actual proper resort. It was like a hotel.
Yeah, it was like a kind of courtyard style hotel with like a pool in the middle and
and because it was that courtyard shape, whatever was going on in the middle, you couldn't see from the outside.
Right, so you could be a little more naughty and that kind of thing. But again, it's one of those things where it was like. There's a lot of reasons. There's several reasons I think that these spaces closed. Part of it is kind of like Honeypot was partially money with the pandemic, but another part, your original clientele are not going there anymore for some reason. Whether it's because they've been pushed out by a different set of clientele,
they got older.
They don't do clubbing anymore, that kind of thing. Financial, the people that are going, we've all been guilty of bringing our own liquor to a party or a club or a hotel and not maybe necessarily spending the money to support the spaces like we should be based on how drunk we might want to be. So we're all kind of guilty of that. And then there's another topic that's another reason that some of these spaces close, and it's worth mentioning briefly. Worth mentioning completely, but we're just going to touch on it a little bit. But that is violence against these marginalized communities that we're all part of.
Violence and discrimination. So while there's definitely like business owner issues, whether it be clients not coming or they're not marketing or they're shifting the focus of their events for different clientele, but there's also a lot of issues with cities and counties pushing back against the gay spaces. I know here in Tampa alone, like the Tampa area alone, we've had a lot of spaces that got shut down because they just couldn't fight, like a small business couldn't fight the entire county or the entire city when it came to things. And, you know, they'll change rents, they'll change restrictions on what they can and can't do, which cause detrimental damage. And then you have hate speech and literal violence against our spaces. We're gonna do a whole episode about discrimination and violence of our queer spaces on another day, but we want, like, definitely wanted to mention, like, that is also a whole other aspect to this. You know, a lot of these spaces, the Flamingo, the Body Shop, they were spaces that we got to all. Body Shop was this great, like, basically the gay equivalent of a biker bar.
Yeah, it literally did kind of look like a mechanic place.
I mean, it was called the Body.
Was it an old gas station? Because it
looked
like
it was like that was the whole thing, was that it was basically like
a body shop,
like a body shop for cars. Like that's
get under the hood.
That's why there were like tires on the thing.
It was. I love a good theme bar.
Right. It was also just like a dirty fucking hole in the wall. Like
it fit in on the street that it was.
It did. But like those were spaces that supported the community.
Yeah.
We went to
Leather Social used to be
Leather
there.
Social there.
Social used to be there, right? Yeah.
Over at Flamingo, Florida Puppy Contest,
number of events.
Florida Fetish events. Florida Leather Fetish events. You know, these were spaces that we went and they hosted us.
They were excited.
And they were excited.
We were on the sign outside. Yes. Like, they weren't even, like, trying to hide you.
They were like, proud of us.
The fetish people are here.
Right. And it stung really hard when these places shut down because, well, now all of these events who are out there who, like, we do our event there every single year.
It was just, like, kind of assumed that it would always be there.
Right. Yeah.
And no, it's not.
One thing that I noticed a lot about it was there were a ton of people who came out after the fact and were like, oh my God, we're losing our spaces. I'm so sad. I'm so sad.
Where the hell were you last 3 years? Like,
exactly.
Where the hell were you when all this stuff was going on?
You know,
you couldn't stop by for a beer or a cocktail.
Right. They come out and they're not supporting the spaces because they're local. We can just go home. Okay, great. But still, there's other ways you can support the venue.
You don't have to stay the night there, but you could donate. You could buy drinks. You could buy food there.
They did have actually really good food. I was surprised the first time I ate
never ate there.
I only ate there the last time I went. Oh, can we just talk about how I am so sad that I will never get to try a rum bucket? I know I mentioned it on multiple episodes, but the Flamingo rum
last
event,
they're a thing of legend.
If anyone has a rum bucket from Flamingo, can I please borrow it for our Kaitlyn?
If you're the bartender that used to work there.
I actually found one of the Flamingo bartenders. They're working at another spot in St.
Well, maybe they can make you a rum bucket.
Maybe
in a different bucket.
In a different bucket.
But like, yeah, they were, you know, those people weren't out there. And the thing is you can't just support these spaces on event weekends.
Right.
You need to support them in between. We do stuff out at Sawmill. We go to events at Sawmill, which is a camping. Well, it's a, like, some people live there, but it's also camping space. It's a whole queer resort place. Yeah, I love going out there for events. But I also go out on, like, a random Friday or a Saturday or a random weekday because just putting money into your community spaces during the week isn't helping them stay open or just going to them during events. Right. Isn't going to help them stay open year round on a random weekday.
Right.
And I think a lot of people forget that until it's too late.
Yeah. It's like if you're getting a pint after work or something, if the option in your area is to support a queer space and you can get the same beer you're going to drink somewhere else, go there and have your damn beer. That's an easy thing to do. It's if you were already going to do it, then do it. Do you have any thoughts, Kaitlyn?
No, my thoughts were like Flamingo. I think was the one out of all of the kind of recent local ones that I can say affected me the most, because that's, if we're looking at gay bars or queer spaces, things, that's the one that I actually went to, because it's the one that I went to events at. It's the one that we would go to, just like they had like a little on-site kind of leather-esque bar. That was open all the time. The Code,
dark,
and so like there were times that we would go there, and that was like It was.
It was for a reason.
And like it was a little like bittersweet, but also kind of like tongue in cheek bittersweet. Because for me, it was hard because I was always going as the girl, and I, especially on non-event weekends, even though I was there supporting their bar, supporting their things, you know, there was always derogatory comments made to, oh, why is the chick here? She just wants a free show.
You still felt a little bit like,
or like, why would you bring your girlfriend to a fucking gay bar? Or, wow, do you think she got lost? Or you're like, is she really a girl? Like, things like that, you know, it's a little bit sweet because it's hard because I wanted to go support the thing on, but when we didn't have, quote unquote, our people, our kink and leather people, it was very clear I wasn't welcome there. From the clientele, not the owners were great. Like the staff, I never had an issue with. But it's those hard kind of like internal battles coming from, you know, being a woman in a gay male space.
You don't want me here, but you need my money to stay open. So make up your damn mind.
I know social clubs that fell apart because they wanted female labor. Like, they would take our blood, sweat, and tears and our money.
Wouldn't give you voting rights.
We weren't even allowed to play in the dungeons we set up. We put your dungeon together. We put your fuck dungeon together. We can't even go in and play.
Well, yeah,
we don't want to play with you.
But I don't want to play with you. I just want to play in the space.
But I think it brings us to kind of an important point of, this isn't to say exclusionary spaces are bad. I think that it's important. Oh, thank you. I think it's important that, you know, everyone have those spaces where it can just be them. But the problem is there aren't spaces where we can just be us. There's a lot of exclusionary gay male events in spaces, which is great. But the problem is you're not seeing the same for non-binary or for female spaces.
And I think the thing is, like, I had mentioned earlier, one of the things that was really frustrating to me is that when we talk about losing queer spaces, almost every single one of these is a gay male space.
Right.
That is who they are meant to. They might let us in.
Right.
They might even like us being there.
They might occasionally throw us a party.
Yes. Right. But for very, very often, if we walk in there, we've had this experience. When we walk into a club and everyone stops what they're doing and they're like,
hear the record go, quack.
Yeah, and people make comments like,
Sweetie, you lost?
Oh, was it you?
At the Eagle. And they're like, do you think she knows she's at a gay leather bar? No, I came here because...
I don't know, Mr. Neoprene. I'm the only one in leather in this bar.
Yes. We're a little salty about that adventure.
But, no, I mean, it's fine. But, like, you know, I've gotten, I think, I say a thick skin. I don't have a thick skin for anybody who actually knows me, but a thicker skin.
She's like, I'm dedicated.
I'm sensitive.
And that's what's sweet about you. That's fine.
But more like a moisturized petal now as opposed to a dry petal.
Yes, a little more sturdy. Yes. Rose at the end.
But, you know, I did kind of build up a skin to, like, those types of comments because I enjoyed going to these spaces because I like supporting them and I enjoyed them. And most often, when I'm going with gay men. And so, you know, they enjoy it.
You have your people. They'll keep
right.
you. Right.
I have my little group and I know that they'll protect me if someone gets too mean.
Oh, yeah.
But...
I mean, as our listeners know, my guys are gay. Like, both of my dominants are gay men. Mm-hmm. And there have been times where we want to go somewhere, but I'm not welcome. I went with them one week to Pig Week. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to most of the pig parties, mostly because I wasn't even allowed to register for the event.
Because you're a woman?
Because I was a woman. We knew some of the people who were hosting some of them, and they were like, oh, well, she can come after this time because the party officially moves to that club, so she'll be allowed in here.
Okay.
Which I knew.
After party of me. Party of one me.
Well,
it's better than nothing. I guess.
And not everybody goes over to the other bar. And believe me,
plenty to see.
There was plenty of fun being had at that bar.
Right.
When I had to go track people down to be like, we need to leave now. And like they were doing, I'm like, sorry, but so-and-so go.
We gotta go.
You know, when I'm with them, awesome.
Right.
And people will treat me with respect and they'll be very nice. But as soon as they're gone,
totally different
story. I'm a pariah again.
Yeah.
Like, even people who literally were just talking to me like 10 minutes ago suddenly don't talk to me anymore.
I don't have to.
Right.
And
that's, you know, I went knowing that was exactly what was going to happen to me. I wasn't upset. I'm in for Fort Fuckadale.
Right.
For, Fuck Lauderdale. For Pig Week. Like, I know what's going on. I'm down to spend time with the guys during the day.
Right.
And if I get to go out to a bar, awesome. I can also walk my happy ass or drive my happy ass, because I was the chauffeur, to any other bar that is not currently having an event and go enjoy myself.
Right.
Totally fine.
Right. It's
hard, though, sometimes when the space can't decide. P House, Parliament House, was having an event a couple years ago, and a really good friend of mine was coming down to teach. He had invited me to come for the class and like come. It wasn't until like the week of that somebody mentioned to the guys that I couldn't go.
Yep.
And then I like messaged my friend who was teaching. I was like,
They told me I couldn't go.
So do you know? And they were like, oh yeah, sorry.
Oh yeah.
And like, well, he was exceptionally polite and was incredibly, but it was basically
his hands are kind of tied.
His hands are tied.
It's like my class, or I get one person to come.
Well, and it was just, the space was not, I'm like, I don't want to like, and I understand.
I don't want to invade your space, but at the same time, I also don't have one.
Right. There's no space.
There's no else for me to go.
Right.
And we do have some groups like Hitch and Bitches and things like that.
Right.
But that's a really small group.
The percentage is not the same.
And it's not the same.
But also, it's like, that doesn't have a stationary place to happen. It has to be self-hosted, which I think is happening with a lot of the more woman-only. Is they're not large-scale events. They're small things of people like, I'm tired of not having this, so I'm going to do it. And all the people that know me and know about it can come, but it's not super wide broadcasted, so there isn't that build up into larger spaces.
Yeah.
And it's hard to just, I've had people tell me, oh, well, you have space, you can go to the het pan stuff. And I'm like,
that's not my space, though. Not really.
It's not really, because even a lot of the pan spaces tend to be heteronormative. Yeah. Like, I love my friends who are in the het pan community. I'm part of that community to a degree. But I don't feel safe. I don't feel comfortable going into those spaces a lot of times, unless they're explicitly like, my people are running it.
Yeah.
Because outside of that, like, I'm still an outsider.
Yeah, we'll run into things like, as far as I had pan space, you run into, it's a lot of straight couples, and in my case, on the power exchange side, it's a lot of male dominant, female submissive only spaces too. And I'm like, oh, that's not my bag, So not only we're getting kind of accosted on a lot of different fronts in that case.
No, I was going to kind of say with it is it's also kind of, I think, ties back into the supporting spaces. Is it's hard when you're getting the newer generation who has kind of become of age to come to a lot of these spaces. And they're running in. Had I not known the kink community prior, I probably wouldn't have gone back to a lot of the gay bars I first went to when I came out in the community, because of like, I was crushed. I felt like I had like rained on somebody's party and ruined and done something I hadn't supposed to.
When you came out as ace, or when you came out as what?
No, when I would come out to bars.
Oh, okay, I see.
That stuff's a whole different like, woo. But
I meant like when you went to a bar, did people think that you were just a straight girl at the bar, or what? That's what
they thought, probably, or the fact that I was a girl at the bar.
I mean, that's usually enough, but I'm just trying to set the picture in my mind.
But the comments like when we went to the Code and it wasn't an event, and I had me walking to the bathroom, and the guy goes, why the fuck would you bring your girlfriend to a gay bar so she can just watch us like we're monkeys? Like,
first off, don't flatter yourself, sweetheart. I really like watching
things like, but things like that. Really, had I not been in a group who regularly went there, things like that, I wouldn't have ever wanted to go back. I don't think it was super because at the same time, it's like, okay, that was kind of mean, but at the same time, like, did I ruin this for them? Did I come somewhere I wasn't supposed to be? Because I'd want to be respectful of exclusionary spaces, and I don't like breaking rules. But at the same time, it's that
door
hard
did not
balance.
say men only. Then you were not breaking any rules.
But it's that hard thing to balance, and I think that's something that could possibly play into a little bit of when those spaces clientele can't decide. That you're getting this whole group of people who can help support the space now that don't want to ever come back because they're scared to mess it up for someone else or they're hurt.
I think also a lot of people forget the history. Like when the AIDS crisis first began and everything, when doctors and nurses were not getting anywhere near AIDS patients, the people who were helping them were lesbian women.
Yeah.
They were the ones taking care of people who were sick. They were the ones checking on people and things like that. And so I think a lot of our community, especially the gay side, like the gay male side, forgets that.
Yeah.
And part of that is because, we had an entire generation die.
Yeah.
So a lot of that information didn't get passed on.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's always been a situation where between the guys and the girls, there's been this divide along the way. And it's just never, there's something like, there were like 800 gay clubs for men, but there was like 150 for women at the same time. Right. It's pushed off.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of, in preparation for this, I looked more into kind of like the history with lesbian bars and stuff. And, it's hard because in the 1970s, there were 200 documented lesbian bar group establishments. And as of 2019, there were only 15 left. And then in 2020...
15, folks. 15 across America.
And in 2020, one of those closed, and it was kind of the start of the real fear set in. And I think more people started to acknowledge because in 2020, after getting to reopen a little bit from the pandemic, Panic Bar in Nebraska closed down. And that was kind of like the shot heard around the world, I guess, for lesbian bars of, oh no, this is a real problem because we just dropped from 15 to 14.
Which, by the way, when you have that few bars, is a bigger percentage point.
Right, and so it's scary because, some bars can do it, but different states have different mandates. There was actually, I don't have my notes for the names of the women, but there were 2 lesbian filmmakers who started a campaign to try to help lesbian bars survive this pandemic. As of January of this year, they had raised $118,000. That's being split among 13 of the 15 bars. 2 bars in Texas, I don't have the names but 2 bars in Texas chose to not accept money because they wanted it to go towards the other clubs as Texas was able to open sooner.
Okay.
With less restrictions.
I was like, why?
No, because Texas is like fully opening it, so they're able to function and have their clientele again.
Okay. Fair enough. Then.
Right,
and
so like
good on them.
they opted out of it.
But good on them giving it to the money that can't be open.
Right, and so like I thought that was really important to see that we're finally starting to see that it is an issue that these spaces are closing.
Was it the Lesbian Bar Project?
Yes. It was like something like Erica Steele and...
We'll find it.
Yeah, but if you want to read the full article, the Smithsonian Magazine, if you just Google remaining lesbian bars, it's the first article that pops up. It's by the Smithsonian, but it gives you kind of a rundown documentation of the closing of the lesbian bars, but also the lesbian bar project that has started with the pandemic.
Looks like the names of the individuals involved are Leah Delaria, Erica Rose, Elena Street, Bertie O'Connor, Charles Hayes IV, and then the Catch Company.
Nice.
Yes.
So the Lesbian Bar Project has a website.
Yep.
So if you want to look into, I assume they probably have some support links too. So if you are wanting to support the 15 remaining lesbian bars in America,
they also do have a list of the 15 bars that are currently open.
Perfect. So you're feeling generous, you can get on there and help keep these spaces alive. If you've been moved to tears or rage by what we've said, hop your ass on there, Lesbian Bar Project.
Another thing to think about is, so there's currently 15 bars open. That's it. Well, in 2015, there was an article written by Gregor Matson, it looks like, in 2016 called Lesbian Bar Closures Lost Women's Spaces. And they had a spreadsheet set up with how many spaces have closed since 2010. So
the 2010 to 2016?
20, yeah.
Okay.
and then how many spaces are left in each of the states where those bars were closing, all of the cities, those regions.
Okay.
There was, according to this, even though the list of places that were closing was huge, there was only like 46 or 48 bars left in 2016. So the fact
being
that
open.
Yeah, that were possibly open, because there were a couple of
question marks on that spreadsheet, and I was like, 3 question marks?
But so in a 4-year time period, we went from 46, 48-ish to 15.
Over fucking half. Over fucking like 75% of...
It's a fucking lot.
It's, yeah. And like, yeah, no. And it's one of those things where like, I'm upset about it because, especially for like the lesbian bars, because I just figured the fuck out that I might be a fucking lesbian, and I don't have those spaces.
There's still no confidence. I might be a lesbian.
I identify as a lesbian currently. I still
She's
feel
very sexually fluid.
Yes,
she is finding where she fits now.
But
just have confidence in yourself. That's all we're saying. Once you have some confidence.
Yeah, but it's hard because I don't have these spaces, and I might not have any spaces left to go to.
Who fucking knows?
To go and kind of learn, because I'm very stunted in the culture of it. I know, and it's like I think that's the biggest thing for me with all of this, and even with like gay male spaces closing, like all of these spaces closing that's history that I'm getting to lose out on from the clientele. Because how am I going to meet them?
Right.
Like, yes, you can meet a lot of people online and things like that, but I think there's something to be said about having that in-person word of mouth of getting to go to a place and someone tell you the story and the history of that place. That's how I felt when I went with Ma'am with Ma'am and you both to like Henrietta Hudson, as she's explaining the like continuously operating, longest standing. Like, to me, I never would have known that place existed because how would I have?
Yeah.
And during that night, we went to a whole bunch of different historic gay places.
We like
gay romp. We had a whole gay romp.
It was
we had ice cream.
Big gay. It was the big gay
adventure.
Night.
Yeah,
it's our big gay adventure. But even then, like, we went to these spaces, but if you looked around, you saw all the other spaces that were also shut down. Like that were not also, but they were shutting down, or they were already shut, and like how much of that we've lost.
Right.
Just wasn't quick enough.
I also think that, like, I used to be very like, oh, well, exclusive spaces are problematic. Mm-hmm. And I will 1,001% put it out there that I was coming from a space where straight passing, I could do that kind of sort of. But as I've aged, like, people's brains grow. And like, I recognize it from another space.
Right.
And I recognize it from it's not that I don't want you. It's like the difference between
I'm not
jealousy.
jealous. I'm envious.
Yes,
I'm not jealous that you have the space. I'm envious because I would really love to have a space that I could be that happy and free and relaxed.
Right.
Because I don't.
I don't have that space.
Even on spaces, like, I love certain places that we go, and like the one place that we go and I can go to the pool and relax and stuff. There's a lot of times I don't feel comfortable there.
Right.
Even though, like...
Or even baby girl. Because with male spaces, like, she doesn't want to see a penis. Mm-hmm. She does not want to see a penis. She's a lesbian who does not want to see a penis. And unfortunately, all the spaces we can pretty much take her to, there will be penises out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of traumatizing for her. And so then she doesn't even want to go at all. And then she's going to miss out
and then she feels bad because she's not going to support the space and she can't go learn these things.
This whole cycle of that.
Yeah.
I also, like, as I've aged, the spaces that are out there that are, whether they're het pan or they're gay or they're whatever, honestly, I'm calling them out. They need to do a better job of creating space. Mm-hmm. My very first trip to a dungeon was to a women's night at a het pan dungeon. Mm-hmm. They had a second dungeon that had actual equipment, not like,
a massage table.
A massage table. Like, they had actual equipment in there, and they had, during the day, they had women-focused, like discussions, workshops, and then at night, we could play in there. And it was a safe female space.
Right.
female energy. You didn't have to worry about, you know, other things that could...
Right.
If you're not comfortable around that.
Right.
Like, it would have been great.
For baby girl. Yeah.
For baby girl. Like, absolutely would have been great for her. But I don't even know the last time that had it.
Ooh, yeah.
I'm sure part of it was because of low attendance. But again, if we don't know it's happening...
Sometimes attraction takes time is a thing as well. I think some spaces are like, yeah, we're going to do this. They try it once, like, well, it didn't work out, we're not doing it again. Well, you have to do it a little bit. You got to keep doing it. Give us a chance, because, like, the people that are going to go to, like, we go to all the spaces, all right? Because we're more seasoned and we're ready, and even though
I got that thick
for social
skin now.
Maybe that's it. Yeah, sure, Kaitlyn. We go into these spaces. We'll bring the people. We'll find the timid ones. We'll find the people that aren't sure. We'll try it first. We will try it first. But if you're a space that's thinking about doing something like that,
do it.
Please give it more than one shot. Please give it more
than
one shot.
I know the guys came to FPE that first year, and they were like, oh my God, like, we're going to be the only gays there. And then we're shocked because they weren't the token gays.
Right.
They were just the token male gays.
There you go.
But, you know, they came, they went to the space, they found that the people that were in that space were inviting, and then they brought their whole big old queer family, like, gay family, with them.
Exactly.
So, like...
Yeah.
We'll bring it. Just build it. We'll bring it.
Well, kind of building off of what Max, I too was one who was like, I didn't like the idea of exclusive spaces, just because I was like, I thought we were supposed to be a community and we're supposed to be together. And then it, you know, I kind of learned like, okay, well, they have that space for that reason. I was like kind of jealous that they have it, but like I'm happy that they have it. It wasn't until the Women of Drummer Women's Only Weekend that Flamingo hosted. It was a very, very small event. It was the first time I'd ever been in a space where it was very hard, only women-identified people allowed in the dungeon. That's inclusive, women-identified is, if you come and you tell us you identify as a woman, you're coming in. No questions asked. But it was nice. It was, I don't think I had ever understood what it could feel like to have a space like that until it happened. It had never registered to me how comfortable I was and how neat it was to just watch women interact with women in an S&M sense.
Different vibe.
It was a completely different vibe, and it was amazing too, because there were probably 10 or 11 male identified or cishet or gay male who helped set everything up, do the things. They ran the ticket booth, but they were adamant, you're not walking in that dungeon unless you're supposed to be there. And I think seeing kind of that role reversal, because you used to see so many women running like the ticket booths and stuff for the gay male events, it was kind of nice to see that same support for our space.
When I was itchy and like didn't know how I felt about exclusive spaces, a lot of it was because the spaces that I was in were, they wanted, like, we want you to do the work, we want you to pay the money, but we're never
going to, it's not
like
equal.
This event is for, you know, you're going to help with this event, but then this other event will be open to everybody or just you. Like, no, they want you to help all the time, put all the effort in, but literally never give you any kind of, I mean, there was even little like community-ness to it, because it was just, we were labor. I know in the rope community, I got some really nasty comments by like super snazzy rope guys because I helped start a Hitchin' Bitches chapter in Tampa. And they were like, oh, I don't know why you need your space, blah, blah, blah. I'm like,
that right there, that comment right there tells me why I need a space. I think the difference here is looking for a space for exclusivity versus exclusionary. And I think those are different things. And I think that's one of the things that aemok is pointing at is exclusivity in a space is meant to bring people that meet a certain criteria or have certain traits together, and so that they can have a community. Exclusionary is when you say it's more of like the rest of everything else is not as good for some reason and therefore can't be in that space. And I think that's the big problem I think we have sometimes is there is a fine line to walk there. And I think a lot of the times it gets kind of kicked over and we get kind of more into the exclusionary as opposed to the exclusive. And I think that's a distinction that everyone needs to work kind of on.
I don't know. I mean, my final thoughts are I hope that I get a chance to go to some of the spaces that are left open after everything starts to open back up.
And the only way that's going to happen is if we find ways to support those spaces. If your area is not wide open, finding ways like either the Lesbian Bar Project or other online donation platforms or other ways to support that community.
That or look and see if some of your bars are doing the like to-go option thing where they send you home with the clothes container.
Right.
I know a lot of our smaller businesses were doing that.
That would fall under financial support. So either supporting the business directly through purchasing through them, or if they have some kind of donation page or something like that. Look into doing that, and when you're comfortable and things are open, then explore those spaces and support those spaces because
they need
clock
us.
is ticking. Clock is ticking.
And we need them.
We do need them. So, and remember,
trouble comes in 3.
And get fucked.